Let's begin with the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone or fax numbers which appear on your screen, including the ITC IP phone number 688-1700. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first question is faxed from Mexicali, and I will read it for you. Why should an organization think about the long term when its short and medium term problems have not been solved yet?
Well, you have to remember that leadership and certainly organizations are much like the highway that you would take on a long trip. You always want to have short-term and intermediate benchmarks so that you can track where you're going, but it's ultimately your destination that you're trying to reach. So you have to look at the long term to be able to keep in mind where are we going and how are we going to get there. And that's really the role of sustainable leadership.
So there's a relationship between the midterm and the long term.
Absolutely.
Objectives.
Absolutely.
Very good. Our second question comes from Lima, Peru, also faxed in, and here's how it goes. How can we initiate a sustainable leadership development program in a small organization with a very restricted budget?
Well, the challenge that so many organizations have is that they are small. And we're not talking about hundreds of employees. The typical organization has fewer than 25 employees, and I'm sure that's true in Lima, Peru. But you have to keep in mind that regardless of your size, every organization needs three things. Number one, you have to have goals because you need to have a path and a direction as to where you are and where you're trying to get to. The second key element of success in an organization is stability, because you have to stabilize the organization so that you can pursue your goals. And the third level, which is ultimately what we're all about, is growth. Because as I said in the first segment, if we're not growing, we're stagnating. So goals, stability, and growth are the key, regardless of your size.
Very good. Thank you for that question and for that answer. And our next question is also faxed in from Mexico, and I will present that question. In your view, which of your proposed 7 elements essential to sustainable leadership is the most difficult to implement in public institutions?
Well, that's a little bit of a loaded question as we come from San Diego State University and ITC. Right. But I would say that certainly curiosity has to be the most significant of the 7 elements that we talked about in the first module. And I say that because the real business of a public university or any institution of higher learning is to stimulate the curiosity of students and faculty so that students are hungry for knowledge and they want to innovate and find new solutions. And I think ultimately that will really help businesses and organizations grow and succeed in the future.
All right. Thank you very much. Also faxed in, our next question from Lima, Peru. Is sustainable leadership the same as long-term leadership by one person?
The answer is no. When you have one-person rule in any organization, you have to be very careful because that can lead to stagnation, especially if the leader is not open to new ideas and innovative problem-solving methods. I think the role of an organization, especially a small organization in which you have one-person rule, is for the leader to cultivate new ideas and to bring people along so that they're in a position to contribute their ideas and solutions to the growth of that organization.
So leadership is not just for one person in an organization. There are others who need to lead their unit or their organization or their sub-unit of the larger organization. Is that a concept that we need to concern about?
People along so that they're in a position to contribute their ideas and solutions to the growth of that organization.
So leadership is not just for one person in an organization. There are others who need to lead their unit or their organization or their sub-unit of the larger organization. Is that a concept that we need to concern about?
Sure. And as you and I have talked about over the years, that the role of the leader is actually to share leadership so that as many people as possible in the organization can grow and participate in problem solving and solutions.
Okay. We're staying in Mexico for the next question, and this is a longer question. So, in developing nations, quite often public universities can only designate their leaders or rectors from within their academic communities. Should they change, or is leadership from within advisable in these cases? Should they change, or is leadership from within advisable in these cases?
Well, again, a little bit of a loaded question because there are traditions, and universities, while they certainly are the bedrock of knowledge and curiosity in our world, I think sometimes leadership stagnates in an organization. And what I would suggest, not only in public universities, but also in government and the private sector, is that universities and these other organizations cultivate and develop the leadership potential of their people so that as leaders retire, emerging leaders, the new leaders, the next generation, as we've talked about, is both ready and capable and willing to step up and contribute at a much higher level as leaders.
Thank you, and thank you for your questions. And let's now move to the second module of our program.